Drop those leashes and step away, ma'am, before this gets worse for you." Sergeant Robert Orser stepped forward, one hand already reaching for his radio. His eyes moved over Joy Brooks, the way men like him looked at things they'd already decided didn't belong. The workout clothes, the nice neighborhood, the two enormous dogs sitting calmly at her feet. Joy did not move. She stood in running clothes and sweat still on her skin. Her hands tightened on two tactical leashes attached to two very still and focused German shepherds. What Sergeant Orser didn't know was that the woman he's cornering had spent 14 years commanding military working dogs in active combat zones, and she hadn't given them the command yet. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The bowls were Harry's job. He had made that very clear when they first moved in. 4 months ago, back in March, when the house was still full of boxes and nothing felt like home yet, he had walked up to his mother, looked her dead in the eye, and said, "I want to feed them. Every morning. That's my job." Joy had said yes without thinking twice. So at 5:50 on a Saturday morning in July, 10-year-old Harry Brooks padded down the hallway in his socks, picked up the 2 metal bowls from beside the back door, and carried them carefully to the front porch. Zeus and Ares were already there, sitting straight and still in the early light, like they'd been waiting for hours. Their tails moved, just slightly, when they heard the screen door creak open. "Morning," Harry told them. He set the bowls down with the serious focus of a kid who understood this was real work. Inside, his mother was lacing her shoes. Dr. Joy May Brooks was 36 years old. She was lean and sharp-eyed, the kind of fit that came not from a gym, but from years of hauling equipment, running drills, and surviving things that most people only ever saw in movies. She had enlisted in the United States Army at 18. She had served 14 years, working military dogs in places the news barely mentioned. She had earned a doctorate in veterinary sciences during her final 2 years of service, stubbornly, relentlessly, between deployments and briefings, because she refused to leave the Army with nothing but a limp and a memory. She had the limp anyway, from a combat injury she never talked about. She never talked about a lot of things. She clipped the dual tactical leashes onto Zeus and Ares herself, even though Harry always offered to help. Old habit. You always secured your own equipment. Zeus, big, dark, 7 years old, with alert amber eyes, stood still for the clip with practiced patience. Ares, a year younger and slightly leaner, pressed her nose briefly against Joy's wrist. "Let's go," Joy said. The neighborhood was quiet at this hour. That was one of the things she liked best about Clover Ridge. She had chosen it carefully. For the school district, for the training contract she'd signed with a federal K-9 program based 40 minutes south, and for the particular stillness of the streets at dawn. After 14 years of never being fully off duty, she had learned to treasure silence. She ran the same route most mornings, down Birchwood, left on Sutter, through the park path, then the short cut back through the rear parking area behind her block. 3 miles, give or take. Zeus and Ares heeled beside her with the smooth, automatic precision of dogs who had run 1,000 patrols in places far more dangerous than a Georgia suburb. The summer air was already thick and warm, pressing down even before the sun was fully up. Joy ran through it without complaint. She had run in worse. The parking area came into view as she rounded the back corner of her block. She saw them immediately. 2 police cruisers, parked at a sharp angle across the entrance, nose to nose, blocking the path completely. Not parked the way you'd park if you were handling something nearby. Parked the way you'd park to stop someone from moving forward. Her pace slowed. Zeus and Ares slowed with her. 2 officers stepped out. The first one, broad, mid-50s, with a permanent squint, that made him look like he was always annoyed by something, rested a hand on the roof of his cruiser and looked at her like she was exactly what he had been expecting to find. His nameplate read Orser. The second officer, younger, hung back slightly near the passenger door. Orser looked at Joy. Then he looked at Zeus and Ares, both leashed, both sitting calmly at her feet, and said in a flat, bored voice, "Got a report of 2 aggressive dogs running loose in this area. Gonna need you to step back." He was looking directly at her leashed dogs as he said it. Joy stood perfectly still. Something cold moved through her. Not fear. Something older than fear. Recognition. She knew exactly what this was. "I'd like to know the nature of the complaint," she said. Her voice was level, measured. "These dogs are leashed and under my full control. I'm a retired Army K-9 handler and a licensed federal." "Ma'am?" Orser cut her off like she hadn't spoken a word. "Ma'am." That was all he said. One word, flat and final, like a door being shut in her face. Orser stepped forward. Not much, just enough. Just enough to make the space between them smaller. Just enough to make a point without saying it out loud. Behind him, Officer Davidson moved quietly to the right, drifting wide, positioning himself at Joy's 2 o'clock. She clocked it immediately. She had been trained to read movement. These 2 were boxing her in. "Sir," Joy said, keeping her voice steady, "my name is Dr. Joy Brooks. I am a retired United States Army K-9 handler with 14 years of service. These animals are federally certified retired military working dogs. They are registered, documented, and legally in my possession. I would like to see the complaint that was filed." Orser looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Drop the leashes," he said. "Step away from the animals." "I will not be dropping the leashes." "Lady, I'm not asking." "Neither am I." Something shifted in his face. The smile disappeared. He took another step forward, and now the geometry of the situation was fully clear. Chain-link fence directly at her back, the front bumper of his cruiser to her left, Orser in front of her, Davidson circling right. 4 walls. No exit. She was 36 years old, and she had been in tighter spots than this. She stayed still, and she kept her breathing even, and she ran the options the way the Army had taught her. Fast, cold, without panic. "These dogs are a public safety threat," Orser said. He pulled his radio off his belt. "I'm calling animal control. They're going to come down here, and they are going to take these animals. You can either make that easy, or you can make that hard." "Personally?" He shrugged. "I don't care which way you pick." "Those dogs served this country," Joy said. Her voice had not changed. "Not 1 degree. They have more documented service than you do. You are not taking them." Orser's jaw tightened. He brought the radio up. He never keyed it. The instant his hand moved, the exact instant, Zeus felt it. Not the words. Dogs don't need words. They read the air. They read the body. They read the small, invisible electricity of a threat closing in on someone they love. Zeus had spent 6 years in active combat zones reading exactly that. So had Ares. They moved as one. Both dogs exploded forward to the full reach of their leashes, hitting the end of the line with a force that snapped Joy's arms taut. They planted themselves directly between her and the 2 officers, shoulder to shoulder, a wall of fur and muscle and focused, furious energy. Zeus dropped his head low and let out a sound that was less bark and more warning. Deep, chest level. The kind of sound that bypassed your brain and went straight to the oldest part of you. The part that knew, before thought, before reason, do not move. Ares followed with her teeth showing, not snapping, not lunging further, just showing. Every ridge of her body locked in the rigid language of a trained military animal that had been given exactly one job and intended to do it. Both officers froze. Orser stumbled backward hard, his hip catching the hood of his cruiser, his radio clattering against the metal. His hand flew up instinctively. His face had gone the color of old chalk. Davidson slammed flat against the chain-link fence, one arm raised in front of his face, one foot already pointed toward retreat. He did not move another inch. Neither of them did. 170 combined pounds of decorated military dogs stood between them and Joy, and the whole world went very, very still. Up the street, on the front porch, Harry Brooks had set the food bowls down on the porch rail. He didn't remember doing it. He had his tablet in both hands, held steady, aimed down the block. He was 10 years old, and his heart was hammering somewhere up near his throat. But his hands were not shaking. His mother had always told him, if something feels wrong, pay attention to it. He was paying attention. Next door, behind the thin white curtain of her front window, 71-year-old Aubrey Carter pressed her phone flat against the glass. Her hands were steadier than she expected them to be. She had lived in this neighborhood for 31 years. She had seen enough. Joy looked at Orser. He was breathing hard, his back against his own cruiser, not meeting her eyes. She gave the command, quiet, precise. Zeus, Ares, Phus. Both dogs came back to her sides instantly, sat, and went still, ears up, eyes forward, watching. The silence stretched out like a held breath. Orser was still pressed against his cruiser hood. His hand, the one that had reached for the radio, hung at his side like he'd forgotten it was there. He was staring at Zeus and Ares, who were sitting calmly at Joy's feet now, watching him with steady, patient eyes. Joy let the silence sit for one more second. Then she said evenly, I can provide documentation of their federal military certification right now, Sergeant. Both dogs. Full records. Would you like to see them? Orser said nothing. His jaw moved. Nothing came out. I didn't think so, Joy said. She held his gaze for 3 full seconds, long enough for it to mean something, then clipped both leashes short and stepped around the front of his cruiser without rushing. She walked the way soldiers walk when they want you to know they are not running. Straight spine, even pace. She didn't look back. Behind her, she heard Orser find his voice again. You haven't heard the last of this, he called out. His tone had gone hard and flat, the way men sound when they're embarrassed and trying to cover it with threat. That's a promise. Joy didn't stop walking. She made it all the way to her front door before her hands started shaking. Not on the street. Not in front of him. She had given him nothing out there, not one visible crack, and she was not about to give it to herself until she was inside her own house with the door closed behind her. She had learned that in the Army, too. Where you let it out matters just as much as whether you let it out at all. She sat down at the kitchen table. Zeus pressed himself against her leg and rested his big head in her lap, the way he always did when something was wrong. He had been doing it since Kandahar. She put her hand on the back of his neck and breathed. Her phone was already in her other hand. Georgie Warson picked up on the second ring. It's Joy. She gave him the facts, in order. The way she would have written an incident report, time, location, names, sequence of events, exact words spoken, no editorializing, no emotion in her voice. Georgie listened without interrupting, which was one of the many reasons she trusted him. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then, tell me the footage situation. My son recorded from the porch. My neighbor recorded from her front window. Joy. A pause. Do not post anything yet, but get copies of both recordings secured right now. Different devices, different locations. Do it before anything else. She was already standing up. Harry was still on the porch when she opened the front door. He was sitting on the top step with his tablet in his lap, Zeus and Ares flanking him automatically, like they'd always belonged there. He looked up at her with the careful expression of a 10-year-old who knew something serious had happened and was waiting to be told how serious. "You recorded everything?" Joy asked. He held up the tablet. "The whole thing." She looked at him for a moment. This boy, his father's eyes, her own jaw, and felt something move through her chest that she didn't have a word for. "Good," she said. "You did good, baby. Come inside." She called Aubrey after she uploaded both recordings to the shared drive Georgie had set up. Aubrey answered immediately, told Joy her footage was clear and steady, and that she had already saved it in 3 places because she had seen enough news stories to know things disappeared. Joy thanked her. She meant it. Georgie handled the rest. By noon, the video was public. By 2 in the afternoon, it had been shared over 40,000 times. By evening, it was on 3 local news stations. The headline on one of them read, "Army Vets Military Dogs Stand Down Officers in Clover Ridge." Harry sat on the living room couch, watching the share count climb on the tablet. Zeus warm and heavy against his side. He didn't fully understand what 40,000 meant in terms of scale. Not really. He understood that people were watching, that those people were angry on his mother's behalf, that people were on their side. That felt enormous enough. Joy stood in the kitchen doorway watching him. Her hands had stopped shaking an hour ago. Her phone buzzed. Georgie texting, "Turn on Channel 7. She turned it on just in time to see Chief Nadine Richards standing behind a podium in a pressed uniform, reading from a prepared statement in a careful, neutral voice. The incident was under review. The department took all such matters seriously. Sergeant Robert Orser had been placed on paid administrative leave pending the outcome of that review. Joy turned the television off. She stood in the quiet of her kitchen and allowed herself one long, slow breath. Maybe it's over, she thought. Maybe it was that simple. She almost believed it. Sunday morning arrived quietly. Joy was up before 6, the way she always was, old habit from years of reveille that no amount of civilian life had managed to break. She made coffee, let Zeus and Ares out into the backyard, and sat at the kitchen table with her phone face down in front of her. She turned it over. 263 unread messages. 14 missed calls. A voicemail from Georgie Warson, time-stamped 7:42 a.m., asking her to call before speaking to any press. 3 interview requests from local news stations. 1 from a national outlet she recognized. She put the phone down and drank her coffee first. Georgie answered on the first ring. "Don't talk to anybody," he said, before she could speak. Not the local stations, not the national request. Nobody. "I'm releasing a statement this morning on your behalf. Short, factual, nothing inflammatory. You don't need to say a word right now. The video is saying everything." "How many shares?" she asked. "As of an hour ago? Just over 200,000. It's still climbing." Joy was quiet for a moment. She looked out the kitchen window at Zeus and Ares moving through the backyard in the early light, unhurried, following their own private patrol route along the fence line. "All right," she said. "No press." "No press," Georgie confirmed. "Let them look at that video and draw their own conclusions. That's more powerful than anything you could say." He was right. She knew he was right. She said goodbye and set the phone down and went to make Harry breakfast. The messages kept coming all day. Most of them were from strangers, people who had seen the video, people who were angry, people who wanted to tell her she was brave or strong or inspiring. She read some of them. She was grateful for them. But the ones that stopped her cold were different. They were from people who lived in Clover Ridge. Black homeowners, black parents, people who had been in this neighborhood for years, and had names and dates and specific memories attached to Sergeant Robert Orser. He did the same thing to my husband on a Tuesday morning last October. He followed my daughter home from the grocery store 3 times before I filed a complaint that went nowhere. We stopped walking our dog past a certain corner because of that man. Joy read each one carefully. She didn't respond yet. She opened a blank document on her laptop and began copying them in, organized by date, with names and contact information attached. 14 years in the military had taught her that information without organization was just noise. She was not going to let this be noise. Harry appeared at her elbow at some point, looked at the screen and said, "That's a lot of people." "Yes," Joy said. "It is." He pulled a chair up beside her without asking, and started reading over her shoulder. After a while he said, very quietly, "He did this to all of them?" "Looks that way." Harry didn't say anything else. He just kept reading. And something in his face, something in the set of his jaw that looked so much like James it made her chest tighten, told her he understood more than she'd given him credit for. She cooked dinner that evening. Nothing complicated. Rice, chicken, the green beans Harry claimed to hate but always finished. She turned the television off and kept it off. No news cycle, no share counts, no comment sections. Just the two of them at the table with the window open and the warm evening air moving through the curtains, and Zeus and Ares settled on the kitchen floor in their usual spots. Joy watched her son eat and thought about James, about what he would say if he were sitting in that empty chair right now. She could hear his voice so clearly, sometimes it almost hurt. Low and steady and certain, the way it always was when things got hard. "You handled it, Joy. Now let the rest take care of itself." She almost smiled. "Mom," Harry said, looking up, "are we going to be okay?" She looked at him directly. She never lied to him, not once in 10 years. "We're going to be okay," she said. He nodded once, serious and trusting, and went back to his green beans. They washed the dishes together after dinner. Harry washed. Joy dried. Nobody said much. The kitchen was warm and ordinary and safe, and Joy held on to that feeling with both hands. Her phone buzzed on the counter at 8:47 a.m. Monday morning. Georgie Warson. Calling, not texting. She looked at the screen. She knew that number. She knew the difference between a checking-in call and a brace-yourself call. She picked it up. Georgie didn't waste time. "Orser is suing you," he said. "Filed this morning. I'm looking at the paperwork right now." Joy sat down slowly at the kitchen table. The coffee in front of her had gone cold. She didn't notice. "Tell me everything," she said. "Civil suit. His claim is that your dogs created an unlawful, threatening situation and caused him emotional and physical distress. He's calling it menacing by use of dangerous animals." Georgie paused. "He's asking for $500,000 in damages." The kitchen was very quiet. "And the dogs?" she asked. She already knew. Something in his voice had told her before he'd said a single word. "He's requesting permanent seizure." Another pause, shorter this time. "And euthanization of both animals." Joy put her hand flat on the table. She pressed it down hard against the wood and breathed through her nose and did not say anything for 5 full seconds. "Who's behind it?" she said. "Councilman Chad Randy. He's retained a top civil litigator for Orser. No cost to Orser personally. And Joy, there's more. Randy has been working the city attorney's office. There's a motion being fast-tracked to impound Zeus and Ares' pending trial. If a judge grants it." "How long?" 72 hours, maybe less." She closed her eyes, just for a moment. Then she opened them. "Fight every single motion," she said. "All of them, whatever it takes." "Already on it," Georgie said. "But I need you to stay off social media, stay away from the press, and let me work." "Can you do that?" Yes. I'll call you this afternoon. She sat at the table for a long time after she hung up. The house was still. Harry was upstairs. The dogs were in the backyard. She could hear the ordinary sounds of a Sunday morning, and they felt strange and far away, like sounds coming through a wall. $500,000. Her dogs. Everything she had rebuilt. She got up, washed her coffee mug, and dried it carefully and put it back in the cabinet. Then she went upstairs and knocked on Harry's door. He was lying on his bed reading a book, Zeus curled enormous and unbothered at his feet. He looked up when she came in and must have read something in her face, because he sat up immediately and put the book down. Joy sat on the edge of the bed. She had always believed in telling him the truth. Not every detail, not always. He was 10 years old, and some things were hers to carry. But the shape of the truth, the honest shape of it. The officer from yesterday, she said. He's trying to use the law to punish me for not backing down. He's filing papers that say Zeus and Ares are dangerous, that they should be taken away. Harry went very still. Can he do that? He asked. He's trying to, Joy said. There are people helping him do it. Powerful people who think that if they push hard enough, I'll quit. Will you? She looked at her son, his father's eyes, her own jaw. No, she said. He thought about that for a moment. Then, are Zeus and Ares going to be okay? I have a very good attorney, Joy said carefully, and we are going to fight this with everything we have. It wasn't a yes. He was smart enough to hear that. But he was also 10, and he trusted her the way children trust the one person who has never once let them down. And so he nodded slowly and reached down to rest his hand on Zeus's back. Zeus didn't move. He just exhaled, long and slow, like he was agreeing with all of it. That afternoon, Joy sat back down at her kitchen table with her laptop open. She pulled up the messages she had been collecting from Clover Ridge residents. 14 testimonies, 14 names, 14 dates. She thought about what Georgie had said. Let me work. She thought about what James used to say. You can't fight a battle you don't fully understand. She thought about Orser's voice in that parking lot. Flat, dismissive, certain that she would shrink. Then she opened a new document and began writing down every single detail she remembered from the morning of the confrontation. Time, location, exact words, exact movements, in the precise, orderly way the Army had taught her to document an incident. If they wanted a fight, she was going to be ready for one. In the backyard, Harry's voice floated through the window, talking to Ares in the easy, unself-conscious way kids talk to animals, telling her everything was going to be fine. Joy kept writing. Tuesday morning came in hard and bright. Joy was already dressed when Georgie called at 8:15. She had been up since 5, sitting with her legal pad and her coffee, running through everything she knew the way she used to run through mission briefings, looking for the weak points, the angles, the things that could go wrong. There were a lot of things that could go wrong. I filed the emergency motions this morning, Georgie said. We're asking the city court to block the impoundment entirely. The judge is Philip Owens. The hearing is set for this afternoon. Owens, she repeated. She didn't know the name. He's been on the city bench for 11 years, Georgie said, and something careful in his voice told her the rest before he said it. He and Randy go back a long way. Joy was quiet for a moment. What are the odds? She asked. Georgie didn't answer immediately. That was answer enough. Do it anyway, she said. Judge Owens denied the emergency stay without granting a hearing. Georgie called at 2:47 p.m. His voice was controlled and professional, the way it got when he was managing his own reaction on top of delivering bad news. No hearing, no oral argument. He reviewed the written motion and denied it. The impoundment order stands. Joy, we have 5 days. 5 days. She wrote it on the top of her legal pad and circled it twice. What's next? She said. Appellate court, state level. I'm already drafting the filing. It's a stronger argument at that level. Federal certification, federal protections. We have a better shot. But it takes time we don't have a lot of. Then don't waste any more of it on this call, she said. Go. She heard him almost laugh. Brief, tight, grateful for the clarity. Then he hung up. Joy sat with the circled words on her legal pad. 5 days. She tore the page off, folded it, and put it in her pocket. She didn't need to look at it again. She already knew. By Wednesday morning, 60 people were standing outside the Clover Ridge Municipal Building. Joy hadn't organized it. She hadn't asked for it. Someone in the neighborhood had put the word out overnight, and people had simply shown up, with handwritten signs, with coffee and paper cups, with the particular energy of people who had been waiting for a reason to say something out loud. She drove past on her way to meet Georgie. She didn't stop. She saw Aubrey Carter near the front of the crowd in a yellow cardigan, standing straight and unbothered in the morning heat, and felt something warm move through her chest. That evening, Councilman Chad Randy appeared on the 6 o'clock news. He was polished. That was the first thing you noticed. Silver-haired, well-dressed, the kind of man who had been performing reasonably well his entire career and had gotten very good at it. He sat across from the anchor and folded his hands on the desk and spoke in a low, measured voice that was specifically designed to sound like the only calm person in the room. This isn't about race, he said. This is about public safety. 2 trained attack animals were used to intimidate sworn officers of the law. I don't care what your background is. I don't care what your service record says. No one in this city is above the law. No one. He looked directly into the camera when he said it. Joy watched from her kitchen. She noticed the way he said background and service record. Just enough acknowledgement to seem fair, just enough distance to seem neutral. She had heard that kind of language before. It was built for people who wanted permission to look away. It gave them the language to do it. Her phone started buzzing 10 minutes after the segment aired. Some of the messages were supportive. Some were not. 3 people who had been vocal defenders of Joy in the comments section of the original video had gone quiet. She put the phone face down and turned to look at Harry, who was doing homework at the kitchen table and had not seen the broadcast. Good, she thought. Let him finish his homework. One interview request came in that she almost considered. A journalist who had covered police misconduct cases for 8 years. But Georgie had been clear, and Georgie was right. The video was still doing its work. Words could be twisted. Footage was harder to argue with. She gave one short statement to the cameras outside the municipal building the following morning. 30 seconds. Factual. Calm. No performed emotion. Then she went back inside and let Georgie work. The clock kept moving. 4 days left. 3 days left on the clock. Joy was at the kitchen table with her laptop when Georgie called just after 9 in the morning, his voice carrying that particular tightness she had learned to read like weather. Orser's attorney held a press conference this morning, he said. He released documents, military records. Joy, they're saying Zeus has a history of attacking people. She was very still. Pull it up, she said. Read me exactly what they released. She heard papers moving. Then Georgie read it. A single paragraph from a military incident report, stripped clean of every surrounding sentence. No investigation outcome, no clearance, no commendation. Just the bare bones of one moment. A use of force incident during overseas deployment. A civilian contractor was injured. A military working dog identified as Zeus. That was all they had released. That was all they needed. She knew about the incident. She knew every detail of it the way you know the things that cost you the most. She had been 29 years old, 7 months after James died, running on grief and discipline and nothing else, deep in her last deployment, when everything came apart in the span of about 40 seconds. A civilian contractor had entered a secured area without clearance. He had been warned twice over the radio. He had ignored both warnings and kept moving toward a position where 2 soldiers were pinned down and exposed. Zeus had done exactly what he was trained to do, exactly what he was supposed to do, and the man had been injured before the situation was brought under control. The investigation had taken 6 weeks. She had been fully cleared. She had been commended for her restraint and her handling of an impossible situation under extreme conditions. None of that was in what Orzer's attorney released. The local paper ran it by noon. Viral hero dog has history of injuring civilians. Records show. Joy read the headline once. She closed the tab and did not open it again. But she felt it, the way you feel a shift in the air before a storm. 3 people who had been posting in her defense since the video went viral went suddenly, completely quiet. The comment sections changed tone. Not everywhere, not even most places, but enough. Randy's press conference the night before had handed people a reason to hesitate, and now this handed them a reason to step back entirely. That was how it worked. You didn't need to convince everyone. You just needed to introduce enough doubt to shrink the room. Georgie was still talking about responses, about counterfilings, about the full record being submitted as evidence, and she was listening to all of it, and tracking all of it, and doing the thing the Army had taught her, which was to process the damage clearly and without panic, and then decide what to do next. She didn't hear Harry come downstairs. He appeared in the kitchen doorway in his pajamas, hair pressed flat on one side from sleep, and he stood there listening with the particular stillness of a child who had learned early that quiet was sometimes safer than questions. She wrapped up the call and put the phone down. Harry looked at her. "Is it bad?" "It's a problem," she said. "I'm working on it." He came and sat at the table across from her. He was quiet for a moment, turning something over. Then, "Mom, what's a dangerous animal?" She looked at him. "I heard you say it on the phone yesterday," he said. "They're calling Zeus a dangerous animal?" She closed the laptop. She folded her hands on the table. She thought about how much to say, and then she thought about James, who had believed that children deserved the truth in proportion to their ability to hold it, and that underestimating them was its own kind of harm. "Something happened a long time ago," she said, "when Zeus and I were still deployed. I was overseas. There was a man who went somewhere he wasn't supposed to go, and Zeus did his job, and the man got hurt. It was investigated completely. I was cleared. Zeus was cleared. I was actually given an award for how I handled it." Harry absorbed this. "So why are they using it?" "Because they took one piece of the story," Joy said, "and they cut off everything around it. They're hoping people won't look close enough to ask questions." He was quiet for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a car passed slowly. "That's not fair," he finally said. "No," Joy agreed. "It isn't." He looked at her for another moment. Then he said, very quietly, "Okay, Mom." He pushed his chair back and went upstairs. Zeus lifted his head, looked at Joy once, and followed him. The knock came at 9:15 the next morning. Joy opened the front door to find Aubrey Carter standing on the porch in a pale blue house dress, holding a covered casserole dish with both hands and a USB drive balanced on top of the lid. Her white hair was neatly pinned. Her expression was the expression of a woman who had made a decision and was not second-guessing it. "I should have done this sooner," Aubrey said. "I'm sorry it took me this long." Joy opened the door wider. "Come in." They sat at the kitchen table. Aubrey set the casserole down, chicken and rice, still warm, and placed the USB drive beside it with the careful deliberateness of someone handing over something that mattered. "I've lived in this neighborhood 31 years, Aubrey said. She folded her hands on the table and looked at Joy directly. "I've watched that man, Orser. I've watched him work this neighborhood for a long time, and I've seen things I didn't know what to do with." "What kind of things?" Joy asked. "Twice," Aubrey said. "2 separate times on our street. 2 different families." She nodded toward the USB drive. "I recorded both of them. I filed reports both times and was told the matters had been reviewed and resolved. They were not resolved. Nothing happened." She paused. "I kept the recordings because I didn't know what else to do with them. I know what to do with them now." Joy picked up the drive. She turned it over in her hand. "Aubrey," she said quietly, "thank you." The older woman waved a hand, like the thanks embarrassed her. "Don't thank me. I should have pushed harder when it happened. You do what you can with what you know at the time." She stood and smoothed her house dress. "Eat the casserole before it gets cold." Then she let herself out the front door. Georgie had the footage within the hour. He called back 20 minutes after that, and his voice had shifted. She could hear it. The particular change that meant something significant had landed. "This is real," he said. "Both incidents are clear. Both involve Orser and black residents on your street. One is from 14 months ago, one from 2 years back. This establishes a pattern, Joy. This isn't one bad morning. This is documented, repeated conduct. Can we use it?" "Absolutely. But I want to bring someone else in. There's an attorney, Jenna Ashman, civil rights. She's won 3 major cases against police departments in Georgia and Alabama. She's exactly what this case needs right now. I want to call her today." "Call her," Joy said. Jenna Ashman called back within the hour and joined the case before the afternoon was out. Jenna was sharp and direct and moved fast. By the end of her first day on the case, she had filed a discovery motion requesting all records related to the original complaint. The call about aggressive dogs that had sent Orser to that parking lot on Saturday morning. Georgie had called it a long shot. The judge apparently disagreed. The records arrived the following morning. Joy was sitting at the kitchen table with Harry. He was eating breakfast. She was on her second coffee when her phone rang. It was Jenna. "The complaint was called in from an unregistered number," Jenna said, without preamble. "We can't trace it directly, but here's what matters. The call was made at 5:43 in the morning." Joy set her coffee mug down slowly. "I left the house at 5:50, she said. "That's right. Whoever made that call knew your routine. They knew what time you left, which route you took, and where to send Orser to intercept you. This wasn't a response to a complaint about dogs. This was a setup." The kitchen was absolutely still. Harry was watching her face the way he always did when something important was happening. Quietly, carefully, not asking yet. "Someone planned this," Joy said. "Someone planned this," Jenna confirmed. "Which means we're not dealing with one officer who had a bad morning and made a bad call. We're dealing with something that was organized deliberately, in advance, and aimed specifically at you." A pause. "This case just got bigger, and we need to figure out who made that call, and why." Joy stood up from the table and walked to the kitchen window. Zeus and Ares were in the backyard. The morning was already hot and bright and completely ordinary looking. She watched her dogs and thought about the word organized. She thought about who had the resources to organize something like this. She thought about Councilman Chad Randy on that television screen, silver-haired, polished, hands folded on the desk, and the way he had looked directly into the camera when he said, "No one is above the law." "Find out why," she told Jenna. One day, left. Joy woke at 4:30 that morning without an alarm. She lay in the dark for exactly 30 seconds, staring at the ceiling, then got up. She made coffee. She sat at the kitchen table with Zeus at her feet and waited for the sun to come up and thought about the word tomorrow and what it meant. Tomorrow, without intervention, two men she had never wronged would come to her door and take her dogs. She did not let herself stay in that thought for long. Staying in it wasn't useful. What was useful was Jenna, who had been awake since before Joy and had filed the emergency injunction at the state appellate level at 6 a.m. sharp. Joy had read the filing twice before she put it down. It was the cleanest legal argument she had ever seen. Direct, precise, no wasted words. The kind of document that had been built by someone who knew exactly which door she was trying to open and had cut the key specifically for that lock. The argument was simple, and it was airtight. Zeus and Ares were federally certified retired military working animals. Their classification under federal law superseded any local animal control ordinance. The city of Clover Ridge had never possessed the legal authority to seek their impoundment. The original motion was not just wrong, it was legally void from the moment it was filed. The appellate judge had the filing by 6:15. Now they waited. The day moved the way days do when everything depends on something you cannot control. Slowly, heavily. Every hour feels longer than the one before it. Harry went to a friend's house in the morning, which Joy had arranged deliberately. She did not want him in the house if the news came back wrong. She wanted him somewhere ordinary and safe with a friend who had a trampoline and a dog of his own. Somewhere he could just be 10 years old for a few hours without the weight of it. Georgie called at noon with nothing new. Jenna called at 2 with the same. The appellate court was reviewing. That was all anyone could say. Joy cleaned the house. She folded laundry. She took Zeus and Ares on a slow walk through the neighborhood. Not her usual run, just a walk, the three of them moving through the afternoon heat at an easy pace. Neighbors she barely knew waved from their porches. One woman she had only spoken to twice came down her front steps and touched Joy's arm and said simply, "We're pulling for you." Joy thanked her and kept walking. Jenna called at 4:47 p.m. The injunction is granted. 3 words. Joy stopped walking. She was on the corner of Birchwood and Sutter, the same streets she ran every morning, and she stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and stood completely still, while Jenna kept talking, about the ruling, about what it meant, about next steps, and she heard all of it, and absorbed all of it, and said the right things at the right times. Then she hung up and looked down at Zeus and Ares. They looked back at her, patient, steady, completely unbothered, the way they always were, the way they had always been, through deployments and funerals and cross-country moves and parking lots and courtrooms, always just there, always just waiting for her to tell them which direction they were going next. Her throat tightened. "It's okay," she told them. Her voice came out rough. "We're okay." She sat down right there on the curb, a 36-year-old Army veteran sitting on a curb in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, and put her face in her hands and cried. Not the quiet kind, the real kind that comes from somewhere deep and has been waiting a long time for permission. Zeus pressed his whole body against her side. Ares put her head in her lap. She let it out. All of it. Every day of the past week sitting on that curb with her dogs around her. Then she wiped her face, stood up, and called Harry. That evening, the neighborhood came without being invited. People drift to the street the way people do in the South when something worth celebrating happens. Gradually, naturally, bringing things. Aubrey brought lemonade in a glass pitcher. Someone brought lawn chairs. Someone else brought music. Joy stood on her porch and watched it all. Harry was beside her. He had come home from his friend's house and been told the news in the car, and had been very quiet since, processing it in the particular way he processed big things, deeply and slowly, and without a lot of words. Now he stood at the porch rail and watched the neighbors in the street below, and his face had something new in it. Not just relief. Something older than relief. Understanding. He was beginning to see, really see, what his mother was made of. She noticed him noticing. She put her arm around his shoulders. They stood there together in the warm evening, and for the first time in a week, the world felt like it might be all right. 2 days of peace. That was all she got. 2 days of breathing normally, of Harry sleeping without worry on his face, of Zeus and Ares moving through the house with their usual unbothered calm. 2 days of feeling like the worst of it was behind them. Thursday morning ended that. Joy heard it on the radio first. She was in the kitchen making breakfast when the local news anchor's voice cut through the morning noise with the particular tone that meant something official had happened. Clover Ridge Police Chief Nadine Richards announced this morning that following the completion of the department's internal review, she is recommending the full reinstatement of Sergeant Robert Orser. Chief Richards stated that the review found insufficient grounds for continued administrative action and that Sergeant Orser is expected to return to active duty within the week. Joy turned the radio off. She stood at the counter for a long moment, both hands flat on the surface, looking at the wall. Then she cracked 2 eggs into the pan and finished making breakfast. Georgie called at 8:30. She had already eaten, already cleaned up, already walked the dogs. She had given herself those things before letting the day get worse, because her instincts told her the day was going to get worse. Her instincts were right. "There's a rider attached to the Anderson Municipal Safety Bill," Georgie said. His voice was careful and tight. It was added quietly. No public announcement, no debate. If it passes, retired military dogs in Clover Ridge get reclassified as Class II dangerous animals. Retroactively. Joy understood immediately. That voids the injunction. The federal protection becomes irrelevant under the new local classification. Everything Jenna argued, everything the appellate judge granted, gone. They could come back for Zeus and Ares the same day it passes. When's the vote? 10 days. She wrote it on her legal pad, circled it. Beneath the circle she wrote one word. Randy. "There's something else," Georgie said. She waited. "A formal criminal complaint has been filed against you. Obstruction of a police investigation. The parking lot incident." The kitchen was absolutely silent. "Joy, I heard you," she said. "If it goes to prosecution, and you're convicted, even a misdemeanor, your federal canine contractor license is automatically revoked. Your contract, your income, everything you've built since leaving the Army." She looked out of the kitchen window. Harry was in the backyard throwing a tennis ball for Ares, still in his pajamas, laughing at something she was doing with her ears. Zeus was watching from the shade like a retired general observing drills. "We fight all of it," she said. "Yes," Georgie said. "We do. I'm calling Jenna right now." She hung up. She stayed at the window for a while. She watched her son laugh. Then she went and sat at the kitchen table and opened her legal pad and began writing everything down. 3 blows in one morning. Orser back in uniform. A legislative move to undo the one legal victory they had won. And now her career. The thing she had rebuilt from nothing. The thing that kept the lights on and put food on the table and gave her son stability after everything else had been taken. Sitting on a blade's edge. She wrote until the legal pad was half full. Then she stopped and sat with it. The house filled up around her slowly. Harry coming in from the backyard, making himself cereal, settling at the other end of the table with his homework spread out. He had learned, in the particular way that children learn the things that matter, when to talk and when to simply be present. He opened his notebook. and started working without saying a word. They sat like that for a long time. The afternoon light shifted. The dogs settled on the floor between them. Joy stared at the legal papers. She was not reading them anymore. She was somewhere past reading, somewhere in the place where everything feels simultaneously too large to hold and too important to put down. Then Harry's voice came, quiet and certain, without looking up from his notebook. "Mom." She looked at him. "You always win," he said simply. "So just keep going. 10 years old. No drama. No performance. Just the uncomplicated certainty of a child who had watched his mother hold the whole world together for 3 years and had never once seen her fail." She looked at her son for a long moment. She put her hand over his on the table. He turned back to his homework. That night the house went quiet early. Harry in bed. Dogs at the foot of his door. Legal papers spread across the kitchen table in careful, organized rows. Joy sat at the center of it all and stared at the wall, and did not sleep. The clock on the microwave said 4:07. The rest of the house was dark and still. Harry was asleep. The dogs were stretched out on the kitchen floor, Aries on her side, Zeus with his chin on his paws, both of them breathing in the slow, even rhythm of animals with no reason to worry. Joy sat at the kitchen table and did not sleep. The legal papers were still spread in front of her, the same careful rows she had organized the night before. She had read through all of them twice since midnight. She wasn't reading them now. She was thinking. Stripping everything down the way the army had taught her to strip a problem down, remove the noise, remove the emotion, remove everything that isn't the actual shape of the thing, and look at what's left. What was left was this: 3 attacks in 1 day. Orser was reinstated. The rider. The criminal complaint. Each one designed to hit a different part of her life. The dogs. Her career. Her freedom. 3 different weapons. One hand holding all of them. She picked up her pen. She called Jenna at 4:15. Jenna answered on the second ring, wide awake, which told Joy she wasn't the only one who hadn't slept. "I need to talk through everything," Joy said. "All of it, from the beginning." "I've been waiting for you to call," Jenna said. They talked for 40 minutes. Joy laid out every piece in order. The staged complaint, Aubrey's footage, the manufactured timeline, Randy's involvement in the lawsuit, the rider, the criminal charge, and Jenna listened and asked sharp, precise questions, and by the end of it, they had the outline of 3 separate legal moves that needed to happen simultaneously. Georgie picked up at 5:02, groggy for exactly 1 sentence, then sharp. He confirmed everything Jenna had said and added 2 more details she hadn't had yet. By 5:45, both attorneys were on the same call, building the framework. Joy listened. She asked the questions that needed asking. She made notes. Then she said, "There's one more call I need to make." She had the number saved under a first name only. Gloria. Lieutenant Gloria Santos, County Internal Affairs Division. They had met 8 months ago at a federal K-9 training symposium. One of those brief, direct conversations you have with certain people where you both understand within 10 minutes that you are cut from the same cloth. Gloria handed her a card at the end of it and said quietly, "If you ever see something in Clover Ridge that needs to go somewhere safe, call me." Joy had held on to that card because she trusted her instincts about people. She had never called because she hadn't needed to. She needed to now. Gloria picked up on the 3rd ring. "I've been watching this case," Gloria said, before Joy had finished her second sentence. "Tell me everything." So she did. Gloria was silent for a long time after Joy finished. Not the silence of someone processing. The silence of someone who already had pieces of this puzzle and was now holding the ones that completed it. "I've been building a case on Orser for 18 months, Gloria said finally. I have documentation going back 2.5 years. What I have been missing is a direct line to whoever has been protecting him from above. Randy, Joy said. I suspected. But suspicion isn't enough. I need something direct. Something financial. A pause. Is there anything that ties Randy to a personal benefit from what's happening to you specifically? Joy looked at her legal pad. She thought about the discovery records. She thought about the thing Jenna had said 3 days ago. This case is bigger than one bad officer. Let me call you back, she said. She called Jenna back at 6:30. The discovery motion, Joy said. The financial records we pulled from Randy's office. I need you to pull them again. All of them. Look for anything connected to private security firms, K-9 program contracts, anything related to what I do. Jenna was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. Give me an hour, she said. It took 40 minutes. When Jenna called back, her voice had a different quality. Tight and focused. The way voices get when something important has just been confirmed. Consulting fees, Jenna said. Randy has been receiving regular payments from a private security firm called Meridian Group. Meridian has been actively lobbying the city to take over Clover Ridge's K-9 training program. Joy's hand tightened on the pen. Your contract, Jenna said. If the military dog classifications change, the city's existing K-9 contract resets. Meridian steps in. Randy gets paid. How much is the contract worth? Joy asked. The answer came back flat and clear. $2.3 million over 5 years. The kitchen was absolutely still. Joy set her pen down. Orser was the instrument. She had known that. She had felt it from the beginning. A man that arrogant, that reckless, doing something that organized didn't add up unless someone was steering him. Randy was the architect. This was never about a parking lot. It was never about 2 dogs. It was never about a black woman who refused to back down. It was about money. It was always about money. Gloria Santos called the state attorney general's office at 7:15 a.m. Joy didn't hear that conversation. She wasn't supposed to. That was Gloria's lane, and Gloria knew how to drive it. What Joy heard was the callback at 9:40. Gloria's voice carrying the particular flatness of someone delivering facts that have already set things in motion. Formal inquiry is open, Gloria said. The AG's office issued a preservation order on Randy's financial records an hour ago. Everything gets frozen. No deletions, no transfers, no paper going anywhere. Joy wrote it on her legal pad. It also means, Gloria continued, that Randy knows. His attorney will know within the hour. Whatever moves he was planning to make, he's about to get a lot more careful. Good, Joy said. Let him be careful. Careful people make mistakes trying to cover things. Gloria made a sound that might have been a laugh. You think like a cop. I think like a soldier, Joy said. Same instinct. Different uniform. She hung up and called Jenna. Jenna had been awake since before Joy's 4 a.m. call. By the time Joy reached her now, she was already drafting. Section 1983, Jenna said, without preamble. Federal Civil Rights Claim. Orser, Randy, and the city of Clover Ridge. We're not filing a complaint. We're filing a statement. We're going to lay out every single piece of this in federal court, and we are going to make it impossible to look away. What do we have to back it up? Aubrey's footage of both prior incidents, the manufactured complaint timeline, the financial connection between Randy and Meridian Group, and affidavits. Jenna paused. I put out a call for witnesses this morning through Georgie's office. Joy, we have 11 signed statements already. 11 Clover Ridge residents willing to go on record about Orser. 11. From the 14 she had collected herself. From the flood of messages after the video. From people who had been sitting on their stories for years, waiting for somewhere safe to put them. File it, Joy said. Already writing the final draft, Jenna said. I'll have it in by this afternoon. The obstruction charge fell apart before lunch. Georgie called at 11:20, and even over the phone she could hear the satisfaction he was trying to keep out of his voice. The county prosecutor reviewed the complaint this morning, he said. Declined to prosecute. She's not moving forward with it. Joy exhaled slowly. Why not? Because it was garbage, Georgie said plainly. The submission was so thin she called me personally to let me know she found it. And I'm quoting here, an embarrassment to the office. She's not someone who answers to Randy. She took one look at what they filed and wanted nothing to do with it. Joy wrote it down. Draw a firm line through a criminal complaint. 2 down. The rider was the last piece, and it fell the same afternoon. Jenna had spent the morning on the phone with a federal Veterans Affairs advocate named Andrew Richards, no relation to the chief, who had been tracking the proposed legislation since it was quietly attached to the bill. By 2 o'clock, he had issued a public statement through the VA's regional office that was direct and unambiguous. The proposed classification of retired military working animals as Class II, dangerous animals in Clover Ridge, directly conflicted with federal protections afforded to decorated military animals, and any jurisdiction enacting such legislation would face immediate federal challenge. The statement landed like a stone in still water. By 3:30, the state legislator who had attached Randy's rider, a man named Bart Clifford, who represented a district 2 counties over and had apparently agreed to attach the language without fully reading it, issued a 1-paragraph statement saying he was withdrawing the rider pending further legal review. He didn't want the fight, Jenna told Joy. The moment he understood what he'd agreed to, he was gone. Randy picked the wrong ally for that one. The Anderson Municipal Safety Bill passed at 4:15 that afternoon, without the rider. Joy sat at the kitchen table as each update came in. Georgie calling. Jenna calling. Gloria sent a single text that said only, "Preservation order is holding. AG is moving fast." Each time she picked up her pen and drew a line through something on her legal pad. Criminal complaint. Line through it. Rider. Line through it. Financial records. Frozen. She looked at the page when she was done. 3 blows Randy had swung that morning in one terrible wave. The reinstatement, the legislation, the criminal charge. All of it designed to break her from 3 different directions at once. 3 lines through 3 of them by end of day. 1 left standing. She circled Orser reinstated on the page and looked at it for a long moment. That one, she knew, was going to take a little longer. But it was going to fall too. She was sure of it now. 48 hours after the preservation order went public, Orser's reinstatement was reversed. Joy heard it on the same radio she had turned off 2 mornings ago. The same anchor, the same measured tone, a different story. The Clover Ridge Police Department announced this morning that Sergeant Robert Orser has been returned to unpaid administrative leave pending a formal state misconduct inquiry. The reversal comes in the wake of a state attorney general's financial investigation that has raised questions about the circumstances surrounding recent actions taken against local K-9 contractor Dr. Joy Brooks. She stood at the kitchen counter and let it wash over her. Not victory, not yet, but movement. The kind of movement that meant the ground under certain people's feet was no longer solid. She turned the radio off and poured her coffee. Jenna called at 9:05. Orser's attorney reached out this morning, she said. He wants to discuss settlement terms. Joy set her mug down. What did you tell him? I told him my client isn't interested in money. Jenna's voice carried the particular satisfaction of someone who had been waiting to say those exact words. I told him my client is interested in his badge. Silence on the line for a moment. How did he respond? Joy asked. He said he'd be in touch, Jenna said. Which means he went back to Orser, and Orser is starting to understand that this is not going away. Good. Let him understand. Keep the pressure on, Joy said. Every single day, Jenna confirmed. Randy resigned from the Public Safety Committee before noon. He did it with a press release. 4 sentences, carefully written, that said nothing while pretending to say something. Personal matters, time with family, confidence in the city's leadership, gratitude for the opportunity to serve. Not one word about the AG's investigation. Not one word about Meridian Group. Not one word about the $2.3 million contract that had been sitting behind everything from the very beginning. Georgie sent her the press release as a screenshot, with a single line of text beneath it. He's running. Joy read it once and set her phone face down on the table. Running was fine. Running meant he already knew what was coming. 2 days later, Georgie confirmed that 2 of Randy's former associates, men who had been in rooms where certain conversations happened, had begun cooperating with the AG's investigation. The financial relationship between Randy and Meridian Group was entered into the public record by end of week. His consulting fees, the lobbying conversations, the contract projections, all of it, documented, public, undeniable. His political career didn't end in a courtroom. It ended with a press release and a shuttered phone. That was somehow worse, Joy thought. The quiet of it. The way a man who had spent years making noise to protect himself went suddenly, completely silent. Chief Richards called on Thursday afternoon. Joy was at the kitchen table when her phone lit up with the number. She looked at it for 1 full ring. Then she picked up. "Dr. Brooks," Richards said. "I owe you a phone call." "You do," Joy said. She kept her voice even. She was not going to make this easy, but she was not going to be cruel either. Chief Richards was a black woman who had made a calculation under pressure and chosen the wrong side, and both of them knew exactly what that meant and cost. The chief spoke for several minutes. She talked about the department, about pressure from above, about a decision she had made that she was now publicly walking back. She was careful with her words in a way that told Joy a lawyer had probably reviewed them first. Joy listened to all of it without interrupting. When Richards finished, Joy said, "Chief, the decision about what kind of department you want to run, that's yours to live with, not mine." A long pause. "Yes," Richards said quietly. "It is." 2 days later, Chief Richards issued a public statement. It acknowledged Orser's documented pattern of discriminatory conduct. It acknowledged the failure of the department's internal review process. It was measured and careful and arrived several weeks too late. It was not enough, but it was on the record. And records, Joy had learned, had a way of lasting longer than the people who tried to bury them. She was still at the table when Harry's voice came from the hallway, easy and ordinary, cutting through the weight of the afternoon like a light under a door. "Mom, dinner." She looked at her legal pad. The list of circled items, each one crossed through. The work is still ahead. The work is already done. She closed the pad. "Coming," she called back. 6 weeks after the parking lot. Joy stood in front of the bathroom mirror at 6:30 in the morning and fastened the buttons of her army dress uniform one at a time. She hadn't worn it since her discharge. She had kept it pressed and hung and sealed in the back of the closet, the way you keep something you aren't sure you'll ever need again, but cannot bring yourself to let go of. It still fits. Every button, every line. She looked at herself for a long moment. The ribbons above her left breast, the rank on her shoulders, 14 years of her life, compressed into cloth and metal and color. She straightened the collar once, then turned away from the mirror and went to get her son up for breakfast. Harry was already awake. He was sitting on the edge of his bed in the button-down shirt she had laid out for him the night before, trying to get the collar to sit flat. Zeus was watching him attempt it with the patient expression of a dog who had seen humans struggle with clothing before. Joy stood in the doorway. "Here," she said. She crossed the room and fixed the collar in 3 seconds. He looked up at her in her uniform, and something moved across his face. Something too large for a 10-year-old to name, but not too large to feel. "You look like a soldier," he said. "I was a soldier," she said. She straightened his collar one more time. "Let's go." The county commission chamber was already full when they arrived. Joy walked in with Zeus on her left and Ares on her right, both dogs in their retired service harnesses. Clean, straight, the small military insignia tags catching the morning light as they moved. The room was the kind of room built to make people feel small. High ceilings, long tables, the particular quiet of institutional authority. Cameras along the back wall. Journalists with notepads. Veterans advocates in the front rows. Legal representatives from 3 separate organizations. Georgie was already there. Jenna stood beside him. They both looked at Joy when she walked in, and neither of them said anything. They didn't need to. Harry found his seat in the front row, between Aubrey Carter and Georgie Warson. Aubrey patted his hand once without making a production of it. He sat up straight and folded his hands in his lap the way Joy had taught him. Present, attentive, respectful. Joy took her seat at the center table. Zeus and Ares flanked her chair on either side. She spoke for 11 minutes. She had no notes. She had thought about writing some, had actually started twice, filling a page and then setting it aside. But the words that needed to be said had been living in her chest for 6 weeks, and they did not need paper to find their way out. She talked about service, about what it means to give years of your life to something larger than yourself, knowing the thing you're giving it to will not always choose to see you in return. She talked about her dogs, not as animals, but as soldiers, about what they gave to a country that classified them as property on paper and asked everything from them in practice. She talked about Harry, about a 10-year-old boy standing on a porch at 7 in the morning holding a tablet steady, because something felt wrong and his mother had always told him to pay attention when something felt wrong. About what she needed him to understand. Not that the world was safe, because it wasn't always, but that standing up in it was survivable, that it was worth it, that you could be cornered and afraid and still not back down and still come out the other side. She did not raise her voice once. When she finished, the chamber was silent. 1 second, 2, 3, 4. Then the applause began. Not the polite, measured kind, but the real kind. The kind that starts before people decide to start it. Harry watched his mother's face first. Then he brought his hands together and clapped harder than anyone in the room. The commissioners voted unanimously that afternoon. A binding resolution, the first of its kind in the state, protecting retired military working animals from local ordinance override. But the commission hearing was only the beginning of what that day set in motion. The federal civil suit went to trial 4 months later. Jenna had warned Joy it could settle. She had hoped it would. Settlements were faster, cleaner, guaranteed. But Orser's attorney, facing the full weight of the Section 1983 claim and 11 sworn affidavits and Aubrey's footage played in open court, made the catastrophic decision to let it go before a jury. Joy suspected Orser had insisted on it. Men like him always believed they could talk their way out of a room. He could not talk his way out of this one. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They returned a verdict on every count. The city of Clover Ridge was ordered to pay $875,000 in damages. Not $1 touched legal fees. Jenna and Georgie had worked the entire case on contingency. Half went to a legal defense fund for Clover Ridge residents who had faced discriminatory policing and couldn't afford to fight it. The other half funded the James Brooks K-9 initiative, a nonprofit training veterans as certified K-9 handlers and placing them in law enforcement programs across the country. Joy filled in the paperwork herself and wrote his name in the space marked organizational namesake, and sat with that for a long, quiet moment. Orser's criminal case moved through the state system with the grinding, unhurried certainty of something that had been a long time coming. The State Misconduct Tribunal revoked his law enforcement certification within 60 days of the trial verdict, permanently. He would never wear a badge again. That alone would have been enough for some people. It was not enough for what Orser had done. The criminal charges came from two directions at once. The state filed charges of criminal conspiracy and official misconduct, built on the manufactured complaint, the staged confrontation, and the documented pattern of racially targeted harassment spanning 2.5 years. Gloria Santos had 18 months of work in that filing. Aubrey's footage, 11 affidavits, phone records, dispatch logs, and testimony from Officer Davidson, who had quietly agreed to cooperate with investigators 3 weeks after the civil trial ended. Davidson had his own family, his own conscience. In the end, he had made a different choice than Orser. The federal charges came from the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. Deprivation of rights under color of law. The same authority that had protected Joy's dogs under federal classification now protected Joy herself. Robert Orser stood before a federal judge on a Tuesday morning in November and heard the word guilty read aloud 11 times. He was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. No early release provisions, no suspended sentence. The judge, in her sentencing remarks, said plainly that a law enforcement officer who weaponizes his badge against the people he is sworn to protect represents one of the most serious betrayals the court can be asked to address. She addressed Orser directly when she said it. He did not look up from the table. Joy was not in the courtroom that day. She had made a deliberate choice to be somewhere else. At Harry's school, watching him present a history project, sitting in a plastic chair in a 4th-grade classroom with Zeus and Ares lying at her feet, because his teacher had made an exception. She found out about the verdict from Georgie, who texted her a single word during the presentation. Guilty. She read it, put the phone in her pocket, and watched her son finish his presentation. Randy's fall was slower, louder, and more complete. The AG's investigation, once opened, did not stay small. Financial forensics moved through his records like a tide. The Meridian Group payments, the lobbying conversations, the contract projections built on the assumption that Joy would be destroyed and her federal contract would reset. But the deeper investigators dug, the more they found. Randy had been running variations of the same scheme for 11 years across 4 separate municipal contracts. Clover Ridge was not his first. It was simply the one where someone refused to be moved. 3 of his former associates cooperated. 2 more followed. Each one handed over documents, communications, and recorded conversations that Randy's attorney could not explain away, or contextualize, or reframe. He was indicted on 9 counts: financial misconduct, abuse of official capacity, conspiracy to deprive civil rights, obstruction of justice, and 3 counts of bribery spanning a decade of public service. His attorney negotiated for months, trying to engineer a plea that would keep his client out of a cell. The state attorney general declined every offer. Chad Randy went to trial in the spring. The jury deliberated for 2 days, not because the evidence was complicated, but because they were thorough. They convicted him on 7 of 9 counts. The judge sentenced him to 6 years in state prison and a permanent bar from holding public office in the state of Georgia. The $2.3 million Meridian contract was voided. The firm was placed under federal investigation. Randy's personal assets were frozen pending restitution proceedings. He was taken from the courtroom in handcuffs on a Thursday afternoon while cameras rolled. Joy watched the footage that evening on the kitchen television. Harry was beside her at the table doing homework. The dogs were on the floor. The news anchor was describing the sentencing in the careful, neutral language of someone reporting a fact. Harry looked up from his notebook at the screen. He watched Randy's face as the officers moved him toward the door. Then he looked at his mother. "Is it over?" he asked. Joy watched the screen for one more moment. Then she reached over and turned the television off. "Yes," she said, "it's over." He looked at her the way he always did, steadily, trustingly, with his father's eyes, and nodded once. Then he went back to his homework. "Mom," Harry asked her later that night, when she called to talk through the final paperwork on the initiative, "how does it feel?" Joy thought about it honestly, about the parking lot, about the impoundment papers on her kitchen table, about Harry on the porch with his tablet held steady at 7 in the morning, about the 4 seconds of silence before a room full of people stood up. "Like it should," she said. October arrived the way it always does in Georgia. Not all at once, but in pieces. A cooler morning here, a different quality to the afternoon light there, the heavy, pressing heat of summer giving way slowly, reluctantly, like it didn't quite believe it was time to go. Joy believed it. She laced her shoes at 5:55 in the hallway, the same way she always did. Left foot first. Double knot. Old habit from basic training that had survived 14 years of service, 1 combat injury, 1 cross-country move, and everything else life had thrown at her since. Zeus and Ares were already at the door. They always knew. She didn't have to call them, didn't have to reach for the leashes, didn't have to say a word. The moment she sat down on the hallway bench, both dogs materialized from wherever they had been sleeping and took their positions, Zeus on the left, Ares on the right, with the calm, practiced readiness of animals who understood that this was their job and took it seriously. She clipped the leashes, checked them once. "Let's go," she said. The streets were quiet and cool and still half dark, the sky above the rooftops doing that particular thing it does in early October, shifting from deep blue to something lighter and softer at the edges, the first light coming in at an angle that made everything look like it had been freshly cleaned. Joy ran her usual route, down Birchwood, left on Sutter, through the park path where the leaves were just beginning to think about turning, past the house with the yellow door that always had wind chimes going, and the corner store that wasn't open yet but had its lights on inside, and the stretch of sidewalk where the old oak tree roots had buckled the concrete into a small ridge she had learned to step over without breaking stride. She knew these streets now. All of them. Every crack, every slope, every place where the road dipped and caught rainwater. 4 months of the same route had made this neighborhood hers in the specific, quiet way that regular movement through a place eventually does. Not ownership, but belonging. The simple, earned familiarity of someone who has shown up every day and kept showing up. Zeus ran easy beside her, his breathing steady, his big paws finding the ground with the unhurried confidence of a dog who has run 1,000 miles and has no interest in rushing the next one. Ares matched his pace on her right, tail carrying its usual slow sweep, ears forward, reading the morning air. The parking area came into view as she rounded the back corner of her block. She did not slow down before it. She had made a decision about that weeks ago, without quite naming it as a decision. Simply that she was going to run this route, the whole route, without adjusting her pace or her path for what had happened in that particular stretch of asphalt. But she did slow, just slightly, when she reached it. She didn't plan to. Her feet just did it on their own. She stopped at the entrance to the parking area and stood there for a moment in the early morning light. The same chain-link fence, the same cracked asphalt, the same narrow corridor between the fence line and the back of her block where 2 cruisers had once parked nose to block her path. Empty now. Completely. Ordinarily empty. No cruisers, no uniforms, No one standing between her and the way home. She looked at it. She breathed. She thought about Harry on the porch with his tablet held steady. She thought about Georgie's single-word text in a fourth-grade classroom. She thought about a courtroom she had chosen not to sit in, and a verdict she had found out about from a plastic chair while her son talked about history. She thought about James. You handled it, Joy. Now let the rest take care of itself. She exhaled. Then she ran through it. The kitchen light was on when she came through the back door. Harry was at the table in his pajamas, a bowl of cereal in front of him, his hair pressed flat on one side from sleep. He had clearly been awake for about 4 minutes. Zeus and Ares moved past her immediately and repositioned themselves at his feet with practiced precision, angling hopefully for anything that might fall from the bowl. He looked up when she came in. "Good run?" he asked. She was still catching her breath. She crossed the kitchen, pulled out the chair across from him, and sat down. The morning light came through the window above the sink and fell across the table in a long, warm rectangle, across the cereal bowl and the legal pad she'd left there last night, and the photograph of James she kept on the windowsill. His face caught mid-laugh in a moment so ordinary it hurt sometimes to look at. She looked at it now and did not look away. Then she looked at her son. "Good run," she said. Harry nodded, satisfied, and went back to his cereal. Zeus exhaled deeply at his feet. Ares did the same. The house was warm and quiet, and full of everything she had fought for. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel, and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.